Hey there, sleepy friends, and welcome back to Hafee Sleep. Whether you're joining me under the deep indigo of the evening sky, the quiet hush of a midnight hour, or the first soft light of dawn creeping through your window, I'm so glad you're here. Tonight, we're going on a journey, not just to relax, but to explore one of the most beautiful mysteries there is. We're going to drift through time and space, all the way back to the very beginning of everything. So, get comfortable, close your eyes, and let your imagination float free. And if you're new here, you've found a cozy corner of the universe designed for wonder and rest. If this journey helps you unwind or sparks a little curiosity, consider subscribing to Hafee Sleep. It truly helps this channel grow and allows me to bring more peace and wonder your way. I'd also love to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight, and what time is it for you? Let me know in the comments below. It's so special to think of us all, scattered across the globe, sharing this moment of calm and curiosity together. And now, let's begin. Take a deep breath in and slowly let it go. Have you ever laid on your back in the grass on a clear summer night, looking up at that impossible tapestry of stars, and felt a question bubble up from somewhere deep inside you? It's not just a casual curiosity. It's a profound, almost ancient whisper from the very core of your being. It's a question that has haunted philosophers, theologians, and scientists for as long as we've had the capacity to wonder. You look at that vast, beautiful, and seemingly endless universe, and you can't help but ask, what was here before all of this? If the universe, as we understand it, began at a single monumental point we call the Big Bang, then what, in the name of all that is mysterious, existed before the beginning? It's a dizzying thought, isn't it? It's like trying to imagine the color of a sound or the taste of a memory. It feels like our minds, wonderful as they are, might not be built to handle such a concept, but that doesn't stop us from trying. So let's take a journey together, a journey to the very edge of time and space, and peer into the greatest unknown there is. Let's explore what might have existed before our universe was born. Now, to even begin this adventure, we have to first understand what we mean by the Big Bang. It's a term we throw around a lot, but its true meaning is often misunderstood. The Big Bang wasn't an explosion in space, like a cosmic firecracker going off in some pre-existing empty room. That's the first and most important thing to get our heads around. Instead, it was the rapid expansion of space itself. Imagine the universe is the surface of a balloon. Not a shiny party balloon, but maybe a simple dull rubber one, the kind a clown might use to twist into animal shapes. Now take a permanent marker and put little dots all over it. Lots of them. Let's say each dot is a galaxy, a great island of billions of stars. Right now, the balloon is deflated. All the dots are nice and close together. This is our universe at a very, very early age. Now you start to blow. The rubber stretches. The balloon expands. What happens to our galaxy dots? Well, they don't just sit there while the balloon grows around them. They are embedded in the rubber itself. As the rubber stretches, the dots themselves are carried apart from one another. This is the absolute heart of the concept. The galaxies aren't racing away from each other through space. They are being carried apart by the expansion of the space between them. Here's a way to really feel this. Imagine two dots that are right next to each other. As you blow up the balloon a little bit, the space between them stretches, and they move a tiny distance apart. Now, imagine two dots on opposite sides of the balloon. The space between them is much, much larger. When you blow the same amount of air into the balloon, that vast expanse of rubber between them stretches just the same as the tiny bit between our first two dots. But because there's so much more of it, the total distance added between the far apart dots is much greater. From the perspective of any single dot, it would see all the other dots moving away from it, and the dots that were farthest away would appear to be fleeing the fastest. This is exactly what our real telescopes see when we look out into the cosmos. Every galaxy is moving away from us, and the farther away it is, the faster it's receding. It's not that we're at the center of some grand explosion. It's that every point in the universe sees the exact same thing. Every galaxy is, from its own perspective, the center of the expansion. It's a democratic universe. Every point gets the same view. This is why the balloon's surface is such a perfect model. It has no center. You can search that balloon all day long and you will never find the spot where the expansion started. The starting point is everywhere. It is every single dot, because every dot was once part of that original infinitesimal point. Now, let's run the film backwards, like rewinding a tape. We see all the galaxies coming closer together. The universe gets denser, hotter, and smaller. The balloon shrinks. We go back and back and back, past the formation of the first stars, past the first atoms, back to a sea of raw energy. The universe becomes a searing, dense soup of fundamental particles. Keep going. Further back. It gets even hotter, even denser. All of the universe's mass and energy, everything that will ever become every galaxy, every star, every planet, and every one of us, is compressed into a smaller and smaller volume. Eventually, we approach a point where all our known laws of physics simply break down. This state of infinite density and temperature is what we call a singularity. It's the moment the math of Einstein's general relativity points to, but it's also the moment the math gives up, throws its hands in the air, and says, "I have no idea what happens here." This singularity is the mathematical representation of time zero, the beginning of our cosmic clock. And this is where our language betrays us. We say the universe was once the size of a peach, or a marble, or a subatomic particle. But these are all things that exist within space. The primordial universe wasn't a tiny thing in a vast emptiness. It was all there was. There was no outside. There was no empty room for it to sit in. There was no container. It wasn't a seed planted in a field of nothingness. It was the entire field curled up into an unimaginably tiny knot. Space itself was compressed. And here's the real kicker. Time was part of that package deal. This is the hardest part to grasp, because we are prisoners of time. We experience it as a constant flowing river that always moves forward. We have a past, a present, and a future. The idea that time itself could have a beginning is almost impossible to truly feel in our bones. But think of it this way. Before the Big Bang, there was no before. The word loses all meaning. If the Big Bang was the beginning of time, then asking what happened before, it is like a character in a book asking what happened before page 1. The story itself, the pages and the words, that's where time exists for that character. There is no before page 1 within the narrative of the book. The concept only makes sense to us, the readers, holding the book in our hands. But if the universe is all there is, then there is no reader outside the book. We are the words on the page. This is why scientists sometimes say the question, "What was before the Big Bang?" is nonsensical. It's a category error. It's like asking, "What sound does the color purple make?" Or, how much does happiness weigh? You're using a concept from one domain and applying it to another where it doesn't belong. Before is a temporal term, a word of time. If time did not exist, then neither did before. But wait, you might say, what about God? Or what about some other cosmic state? And those are profound questions, but they exist in a different framework. If something did exist before our Big Bang, it couldn't have existed in time as we know it. It would have to be part of a broader reality, where the concepts of before and after are governed by completely different rules, perhaps a realm beyond time altogether, or a different kind of time that we can't even imagine. Our physics, the physics of our universe, hits a wall at the singularity. To peer beyond it, we need new physics, new ideas, new ways of thinking. And that's exactly where those thrilling theories of quantum foam, multiverses, and cyclic universes come into play. They are brave, brilliant attempts to build a ladder that lets us climb over that wall and peek into the great unknown that might or might not have preceded our own grand beginning. So, when we talk about the Big Bang, we're not talking about a bomb going off in the dark. We are talking about the sudden dramatic appearance of there itself, the instant that here became possible, the awakening of then and now. It was the first moment of everything we can ever know, and that's why the question of its origin is the most tantalizing and difficult one we can ever ask. This is where we have to put on our thinking caps, but the fun kind, not the boring kind, because we're about to dive into the rabbit hole, and it's a deep one, filled with the weirdest and most wonderful ideas humanity has ever cooked up. You see, telling ourselves that the question, what came before, is meaningless is a bit like a detective hitting a dead end in a case and just deciding to go home for a nice cup of tea. It's sensible, but it's not satisfying. The best detectives and the best scientists, they can't let it go. They pace around the room, they stare at the clues, and they start to ask, okay, but what if the rules themselves are wrong? What if I'm missing a whole other set of rules? That's exactly what happened in cosmology. The rules of general relativity, Einstein's magnificent theory of the very large, brought us right to the edge of the Big Bang singularity, and then, politely but firmly, said, I'm sorry, I cannot compute. My circuits are overloaded. It was a full stop, a period at the end of the sentence of the universe, but then, another group of scientists who spent their lives studying the rules of the very small, the quantum physicists, peeked over the shoulders of the cosmologists and said, hang on a minute, we know a thing or two about things that don't make sense. Let us have a look. And this is the beautiful collision of ideas that gives us a fighting chance to answer the unanswerable. You see, the universe at its very beginning wasn't just very large and dense. It was also incredibly small. Smaller than an atom, smaller than a proton, smaller than any particle we can name. And when things get that small, the wild and wacky rules of quantum mechanics take over. General relativity is like a brilliant, precise clockmaker. It predicts the motion of planets and the bending of light with gorgeous accuracy. But quantum mechanics is like a hyperactive, genius toddler with a bag of magical building blocks. It deals in probability, chaos, and sheer, unadulterated potential. So to imagine what might have been brewing before our clock started ticking, we have to try and understand this quantum world. And I promise we'll take it slow. Let's start with this idea of a vacuum. We think of a vacuum as pure nothingness, empty space, a void. If you could somehow get a box and suck out every single atom of air, every molecule of dust, every hint of light, you'd have a perfect vacuum, right? Well, according to quantum mechanics, you'd be wrong. That box would be far from empty. It would be fizzing with an insane amount of activity. It's called the quantum vacuum, and it is anything but vacuous. Here's a way to picture it. Imagine the fabric of space itself is like the surface of the most perfectly calm, glassy ocean you can imagine. It looks still and flat and empty. But now, imagine you're a tiny, tiny water bug, so small that you can see the individual water molecules. From your incredible perspective, that calm surface wouldn't be calm at all. It would be a raging, turbulent foam. Molecules would be jiggling and vibrating. Tiny bubbles would be forming and popping. Energy would be fizzing everywhere. This frothing, bubbling mess is what physicists call quantum foam. It's the fundamental texture of reality at the tiniest possible scales, scales 1 trillion times smaller than an atom. And in this foam, wild things happen. The famous Heisenberg uncertainty principle tells us that we can't ever know everything about a particle with perfect precision. There's always a trade-off. And this uncertainty isn't just a limit of our measuring tools. It's a fundamental property of the universe. It means that energy can borrow from nothing as long as it pays it back incredibly quickly. This leads to the most bizarre party trick in all of physics: quantum fluctuations. Out of this seething foam of potential, pairs of virtual particles can spontaneously blink into existence. A particle and its opposite, an antiparticle, just pop out of nowhere. They exist for an unimaginably short sliver of time, maybe a millionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second, before they find each other, annihilate, and vanish, paying back the energy debt of their brief existence. Think of it as the universe's version of a short-term loan. The books have to balance, but for a fleeting moment, something can come from nothing. These virtual particles aren't just a mathematical fantasy. We can see their effects in laboratories. They are real. So, the nothing of empty space isn't a sterile void. It's a creative cauldron, a dynamic arena where particles constantly flicker in and out of existence. It's a universe-wide game of now you see me, now you don't, played at a speed we can barely conceive. Now, hold that thought. We have a quantum vacuum, a nothing, that is actually a seething soup of potential something. And we have the Big Bang, which looks like the ultimate something appearing from nothing. Stephen Hawking, along with other physicists like James Hartle, made a breathtaking intellectual leap. They connected these two dots. What if, they asked, the Big Bang itself was just the mother of all quantum fluctuations? What if our entire universe is simply one of those virtual particle pairs, but on a cosmic, unimaginable scale? Let's play this out. Imagine that primordial, metaphysical ocean of quantum foam, before time, before space. It's not a place. It's a state of pure potential. In this froth, fluctuations are happening constantly. Most are tiny, producing virtual particles that vanish in an instant. But what about probability? If you roll a dice enough times, you'll eventually get 100 sixes in a row. It's incredibly unlikely, but in an infinite sea of possibility, even the most unlikely events must happen eventually. So, in this eternal quantum sea, a fluctuation of staggering proportions occurs. A bubble of space-time forms. A tiny universe blinks into existence. For most of these bubbles, the story ends immediately. They collapse back into nothingness, their energy debt called in. But perhaps through a process quantum physicists call tunneling, where a particle can, thanks to quantum weirdness, bypass a barrier it shouldn't be able to cross. This particular bubble didn't immediately pop. It tunneled through an energy barrier into a stable state. It got a lucky roll of the quantum dice. It found itself in a configuration that allowed it to not just exist, but to expand. Violently, rapidly. And once that expansion started, the energy of the vacuum itself, that seething quantum foam, drove it forward, inflating that tiny bubble into the vast cosmos we inhabit today. In this stunning picture, the universe didn't appear in anything or from anything. It appeared from the same process that makes particles appear in a vacuum. It came from a quantum fluctuation of the gravitational field. It came, quite literally, from nothing. But as we've learned, this nothing is the most interesting and active nothing there could possibly be. This idea completely reframes the question of before. There was no before in a linear time sense. The fluctuation didn't happen in time. It created time, just as it created space. It's like asking what happened before the first tick of a clock that was just built. The building of the clock is the event that allows for ticking to begin. Hawking proposed a model called the no-boundary proposal, where the universe is a closed surface without a beginning, like the North Pole. If you ask what's north of the North Pole, the question is meaningless. The universe just is, in a self-contained complete whole, with the Big Bang representing not a point of creation, but a point of transition from a quantum realm without time to a classical realm with time. So, in this view, we are all here because of the ultimate cosmic lottery win. We are the residents of a lucky bubble in an infinite, eternal quantum foam. Our universe is a spontaneous event, a gift from the chaotic, probabilistic heart of reality itself. It's a humbling and utterly awe-inspiring thought. It suggests that the answer to the greatest question might not be found in some distant, foreign realm, but in the bizarre and beautiful rules that govern the very fabric of existence at its smallest scale. We are, perhaps, the children of quantum uncertainty, living proof that from nothing, something magnificent can, against all odds, emerge. Now hold on to your hats, because we're about to take a ride on the universe's wildest roller coaster. We just talked about the universe possibly popping into existence from a quantum fluctuation, a cosmic jackpot winner. But that idea, as mind-bending as it is, still left a few nagging questions on the table for scientists. It's like we have a brilliant explanation for how the first spark was lit, but we're still scratching our heads about how that tiny spark became a roaring, perfectly organized bonfire so incredibly quickly. You see, the original Big Bang model, for all its genius, had a few problems. And it was these very problems that led to one of the most spectacular and important ideas in all of modern cosmology: the theory of cosmic inflation. This isn't just a small tweak, it's a whole new chapter in the story, and it opens a door to possibilities so vast they make the already enormous universe seem like a single grain of sand on an infinite beach. So, what were these problems? Let's imagine the universe as it was in the old model, just after the initial bang. Two main things bothered cosmologists. First, there's the horizon problem. Think about the cosmic microwave background radiation we mentioned earlier, that ancient afterglow from the universe's infancy that we can detect from every direction in the sky. The baffling thing is, it's almost exactly the same temperature everywhere. Now, that might not sound like a problem, but it's a huge one. Why? Because of the speed limit of the universe, the speed of light. In the standard Big Bang model, There simply hasn't been enough time for light or heat or any kind of information to travel from one far-flung edge of the observable universe to the other, to even everything out. It's like walking into a gigantic concert hall, 100 miles wide, and finding that every single seat is exactly 72 degrees Fahrenheit. How did the air conditioning manage to perfectly regulate the temperature everywhere at once without any time to circulate the air? The two sides of the universe are like two people who have never met, never exchanged a letter, never even waved at each other, and yet they're wearing identical outfits. It's spooky. They shouldn't be so perfectly in sync. The second issue is the flatness problem. Our universe appears to be almost perfectly geometrically flat. Now, flat here doesn't mean like a sheet of paper. In cosmology, it refers to the critical balance between the expansion energy of the universe and the pull of gravity from all the matter inside it. For the universe to be as flat as we observe it to be, that balance had to be impossibly perfectly precise in those first moments. Imagine balancing a pencil on its tip. Now, imagine that pencil has been perfectly balanced for 13.8 billion years. That's the level of fine-tuning we're talking about. If the expansion rate had been even a tiny, tiny fraction faster, the universe would have flown apart so quickly that galaxies and stars could never have formed. If it had been a tiny, tiny fraction slower, gravity would have won immediately, pulling everything back into a big crunch, almost before it began. The initial conditions had to be so perfect it seemed, well, suspicious. Enter our heroes, physicists like Alan Guth and Andre Linde in the early 1980s. They were like the ultimate mechanics, looking under the hood of the cosmos and proposing a fix so elegant it took everyone's breath away. They said, what if, right at the very start, the universe didn't just expand, but hyper-expanded? What if it went through a period of stupendous, exponential growth that solved all these problems in one fell swoop? They called this theory inflation. Let's try to grasp the scale of this. We're talking about the first fleeting moments of existence. The Big Bang event, time zero, has just happened. The universe is a seething, hot, dense soup. And then, perhaps triggered by a change in the state of a mysterious energy field that physicists call the inflaton field, it happens. In an almost impossibly short burst of time, from about 10 to the power of minus 36 seconds to 10 to the power of minus 32 seconds after the beginning, the universe doubled in size. And then it doubled again, and again, and again. Not like slow, regular doubling, but frantic, crazy, exponential doubling. Think of it like this. If you put a penny on the first square of a chessboard and doubled it on each subsequent square, you'd be a billionaire by the end. Inflation did this doubling not 64 times, but maybe 100 times or more, all in a span of time so short it makes a nanosecond look like an eternity. The numbers are just silly. Imagine a single proton. Now, in the time it takes light to cross that proton's width, inflation could have blown that tiny speck up to the size of the entire galaxy. It's an expansion so violent, so rapid, that it makes the subsequent 13.8 billion years of regular expansion we've had since look like it's barely moving at all. It was the universe's ultimate growth spurt, and just like that, poof, the problems vanish. The horizon problem? Solved. The reason the temperature is the same everywhere is that everything we see in our observable universe was, before inflation, crammed into a tiny, tiny, microscopic region. A region so small that it had more than enough time to even out its temperature, to chat with itself and get comfortable, before inflation blew it up to cosmic size. Our entire cosmos was once a single, cozy, well-mixed room before it was suddenly stretched into a continent. That's why it looks uniform. It was uniform back when it was small. The flatness problem solved. Imagine the surface of a partially inflated balloon. It might have all sorts of wrinkles and curves. Now blow it up to the size of a house. Those tiny wrinkles and curves become so stretched out that the surface appears incredibly smooth and flat. Inflation did that to the entire geometry of the universe. It took whatever shape it had, no matter how curved or lumpy, and stretched it so immensely that it became the flat, smooth cosmos we observe today. It made the universe flat for the same reason the Earth looks flat from where you're standing. It's just so big that the curvature is unnoticeable on your local scale. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, it gets even wilder. The most thrilling extension of this idea is something called eternal inflation. You see, the mechanism that drives inflation, this inflating field, might not be a one-time event. Think of it like water. Normally, water wants to be in its liquid state, but if it's supercooled, it can exist in a precarious, unstable state until something triggers it to freeze. The inflaton field might be similar. It could exist in a high-energy, false vacuum state that desperately wants to decay down to a lower-energy, stable state. And that decay is what releases the colossal energy that drives the inflationary expansion. But here's the twist proposed by physicists like Linda. What if this decay doesn't happen everywhere at once? What if it happens in patches, like bubbles forming in a pot of boiling water? In this bubble universe model, the primordial quantum foam, or the meta-universe, or whatever you want to call the arena in which this is happening, is constantly in a state of inflationary expansion. It's a raging, boiling sea of high-energy false vacuum expanding at an insane rate. But here and there, randomly, tiny bubbles of the true vacuum form. In each of these bubbles, the inflaton field decays. The inflation inside that bubble stops, and the energy of that decay is converted into the hot soup of particles that becomes a regular universe like ours. It's like a bubble of steam forming in the boiling water. But the incredible thing is this: while inflation inside each bubble stops, the false vacuum outside the bubbles continues to expand exponentially. It's expanding faster than the bubbles themselves can grow. So these universe bubbles become isolated islands in an ever-swelling ocean of inflating space. New bubbles are constantly forming in the gaps between the old ones. It's an eternal process, creating an infinite number of disconnected universes, a multiverse. This is where our heads really start to spin. Each of these bubbles, each of these universes, could have its own unique properties. When the inflaton field decays inside a bubble, it might settle into a different low-energy state. This could mean that the fundamental constants of physics, the strength of gravity, the mass of an electron, the number of dimensions, could be different in each one. In most of them, the constants might be wrong for life. A universe where gravity is a bit stronger might collapse instantly. One where the nuclear forces are weaker might never form atoms. We just happen to live in one of the bubbles where all the knobs on the cosmic control panel are tuned just right for galaxies, stars, planets, and us to exist. It's not a miracle. It's a selection effect. In an infinite multiverse, every possible universe must exist somewhere, and we can only find ourselves in one that permits our existence. So, in this breathtaking picture, our Big Bang wasn't the beginning. It was just our beginning. It was the moment our particular bubble universe formed and stopped inflating. The question, What existed before our Big Bang transforms completely. There was no before for our local space-time, but the larger multiverse, the eternal inflationary sea, has always been there and always will be, endlessly giving birth to new universes. It's a never-ending cosmic fireworks display, and we are the momentary sparkle from a single, brilliant firework. It's a bigger playground with even bigger mysteries, and it suggests that the reality we call home is far grander and more strange than we ever dared to dream. Now, let's turn the page to another chapter in our book of cosmic possibilities, one that feels strangely familiar, almost ancient in its poetry. While the idea of a universe from quantum foam feels like a miraculous accident, and the multiverse theory feels like an infinite, sprawling labyrinth, this next idea offers a different kind of comfort. It's the comfort of rhythm, of cycle, of the familiar turn of the seasons, but on a scale so grand it defies imagination. This is the idea of the cyclic universe. It's a concept that whispers of eternity, not in a static sense, but in a dynamic, pulsing, living eternity. It suggests that the universe has no true beginning and no final end, but is instead engaged in an endless cosmic dance of birth, death, and rebirth. It's the universe as a phoenix, perpetually rising from its own ashes. This isn't some newfangled notion. In fact, it's one of the oldest stories humanity has ever told itself. Look to ancient Hindu cosmology, for instance, with its concept of kalpas, vast cycles of creation and destruction that unfold over billions of years, orchestrated by the breath of the divine. The universe is created, it exists for an eon, and then it is dissolved, only to be created again. It's a vision of time as a wheel, forever turning. For millennia, this was philosophy, mythology, theology. But in the last couple of decades, something astonishing has happened. Mathematics and physics have begun to catch up, offering a potential scientific framework for this ancient dream. Physicists like Paul Steinhardt and Neil Turok have taken this beautiful, poetic idea and asked, could it be real? And if so, how might it work? Their answer is as elegant as it is bizarre, and it requires us to once again stretch the very fabric of our imagination. It all hinges on the existence of extra dimensions. We are familiar with the 3 dimensions of space, length, width, height, and the 1 dimension of time. But theories like string theory suggest there might be more, perhaps 6 or 7 extra spatial dimensions, all curled up so tiny that we can't perceive them. Now imagine that our entire universe, with all its 3 spatial dimensions, is actually a kind of membrane, or brain for short, floating within this higher dimensional space. Think of it like a single, impossibly thin slice of bread within a much larger, higher dimensional loaf. And here's the kicker. Our slice of bread might not be alone. There could be another brain, another universe floating right alongside ours in this higher dimensional bulk, just a tiny distance away in a direction we cannot point to. In this model, what we experience as our universe is just what happens on the surface of our brain. All the matter and forces we know, you, me, the stars, the galaxies, are stuck to this membrane, like droplets of water clinging to a window pane. Gravity, being different, might be able to leak out into the higher dimensions, but that's a story for another time. Now picture these 2 brains, these 2 parallel universes, floating in the void. They are attracted to each other by the gentle pull of gravity across the higher dimensions. Over an unimaginably long time, trillions upon trillions of years, they drift closer and closer together. And then they collide. This is not a gentle bump. It is a cataclysmic, universe-shattering event. The energy released in the collision of these two colossal membranes is beyond calculation. From our perspective, trapped as we are on the surface of our brain, this collision would look like, well, it would look exactly like a Big Bang. An unimaginable flash of energy and heat, flooding the entire expanse of our brain, seeding it with the raw material for everything that will ever be. The energy of the collision sets our brain vibrating and expanding violently. The universe, as we know it, is born, or rather, reborn. After the collision, the two brains, like two sheets of metal that have been struck, rebound. They fly apart from each other, driven by the ferocious energy of their impact. This is the period of expansion we are living in now. Our universe is still expanding from that last collision, billions of years ago. But gravity is relentless. Slowly, over yet another trillions of years, the mutual attraction between the two brains will overcome their outward momentum. They will slow down, stop, and begin to draw together again. The expansion of our universe will slow, halt, and reverse. Galaxies will begin to rush together. The temperature of the cosmos will rise, and everything will head towards a big crunch. But here's the beautiful part. In this model, the big crunch is not a finale. It's not an end. It is simply the prelude to another collision. As the brains approach each other again, the universe contracts, heating up and compressing, getting ready for the next colossal impact. The crunch is just the universe taking a deep breath before the next bang. The cycle repeats, again and again and again, forever. There is no singular beginning, because every beginning is preceded by an end. There is no ultimate end, because every end is followed by a new beginning. Time is infinite, both in the past and in the future. The universe is forever. In this breathtaking vision, the question, what was before the Big Bang, gets a wonderfully straightforward, yet still profound answer. The before was the previous cycle. It was a universe much like ours, but in its old age, contracting, getting denser and hotter, preparing the conditions for the next collision, the next rebirth. Our Big Bang was not the beginning of time. It was the latest turning of the wheel, the most recent beat in the eternal cosmic heartbeat. This model elegantly solves some of the same problems that inflation does, like the flatness and horizon problems, through the repetitive nature of the cycles. Each collision and expansion resets the universe, smoothing it out. It also offers a tantalizing explanation for the mysterious dark energy that is accelerating the expansion of our universe today. In the cyclic model, the energy driving the brains apart after a collision could be what we perceive as dark energy. Of course, this is still a theory, a magnificent and mathematically sophisticated what if. But it captures the human imagination like few others. It connects the deepest intuitions of our ancient spiritual traditions with the cutting edge of our scientific inquiry. It tells us that we are not just part of a one-off event, a fleeting spark in a cold void. We are part of an eternal rhythm, a story that has been told countless times before and will be told countless times again. We are a note in a song that has no beginning and no end. It's a vision of the cosmos that is not only vast, but also enduring, forever dancing to the slow, grand music of gravity across the dimensions. Now, just when you thought we'd reached the limits of the strange and wonderful, we have to venture even further. Because the human imagination and the mathematics that fuels it is a boundless thing. So let's talk about the ideas that live on the very frontier, the ones that make even the seasoned physicists scratch their heads and smile in bewildered admiration. These are the theories that don't just tweak the story of the Big Bang. They suggest we've been reading it all wrong from the very first page. What if the Big Bang wasn't a bang at all? What if it wasn't a beginning, but a turning point? A cosmic reboot? A transition from one chapter of existence to the next? This idea comes from brave attempts to solve the biggest problem in all of physics, the problem of the singularity. We keep talking about the universe crushing down to an infinitely small, infinitely dense point. But infinity in physics is almost always a sign that our math has broken down, that we've asked our equations to do a job they were never designed for. It's like using a recipe for a cake to try and build a car. General relativity, for all its power, cannot handle the quantum craziness that must have been happening at that scale. So, physicists working on the next great theory, the long-dreamed-of theory of everything that would marry general relativity with quantum mechanics, have begun to ask a daring question. What if the singularity never actually happened? Two of the most promising paths toward this theory are string theory and loop quantum gravity. They are fierce competitors based on completely different mathematics and views of the world, but they both arrive at the same stunning possibility: a universe without a singularity. A universe that avoids the ultimate crunch. A universe that bounces. Let's try to unpack this. Imagine the previous universe in this cycle, the one that came before ours. It's old, it's tired, it has expanded to its maximum extent. Now, gravity, the patient sculptor, begins to pull everything back together. Galaxies rush toward each other, the background heat of the cosmos begins to rise, and everything gets denser and hotter. In the old model, this would continue unchecked, all matter and energy piling up into a single point of infinite madness, the singularity. But what if gravity itself has a secret quantum nature that we haven't discovered yet? What if when matter and energy are packed together beyond a certain critical density, a new repulsive force emerges? Think of it like this. You're squeezing a spring in your hand. At first, it's easy to compress, but the more you squeeze, the harder it pushes back. You eventually reach a point where you cannot compress it any further. The spring's resistance is equal to your squeezing force. Now, imagine the entire universe is that spring. As it collapses, the density rises, and a sort of quantum pressure builds up. This isn't a pressure made of particles. It's a fundamental feature of space-time itself, a repulsive side of gravity we never see in our calm, spacious universe. The collapse continues, the pressure builds, and just as everything is about to reach that mythical state of infinite density, boing, it doesn't crush, it rebounds. The repulsive quantum force of gravity overwhelms the attractive force, and the collapse reverses. The universe, having reached a maximum possible density, springs back outward. The big crunch becomes the big bounce. The end becomes the beginning. This is the quantum bounce. It's a breathtaking idea. It turns the singularity from a terrifying full stop at the end of existence into a mere comma, a brief moment of transition, a cosmic pivot. In this view, our Big Bang was not the moment of creation ex nihilo, out of nothing. It was the moment of rebirth ex materia, out of the material of the previous universe. Now, what would that transition look like? It's almost impossible to picture, but we can try. As the previous universe contracted, the energy levels would have become unimaginably high. The forces of nature as we know them, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces, may have begun to unify, melting into a single primordial force. The very laws of physics might have been stretched and rewritten in that incredible pressure cooker. The bounce, the moment of the Big Bang, would then have been like a great cosmic reset. The universe rebounded, began expanding again, and the laws of physics froze out into the particular configuration we experience today. It's like blowing on a window pane on a cold day. The moisture is formless, but as it freezes, it crystallizes into a unique, beautiful, and complex pattern. Our universe, with its specific constants and laws, is that pattern. This means the universe before ours could have been vastly different. It might have had more dimensions, or different particles, or forces that behaved in strange ways. Everything we know and love about our cosmos, the fact that stars shine, that chemistry works, that we exist, might be a happy accident of this great reset. In another bounce, the laws might have crystallized differently, creating a universe unrecognizable to us. This idea of a cyclical, bouncing universe is eternal, but in a different way from the brain model. There, it was two membranes dancing in a higher dimension. Here, it is a single universe, breathing, inhaling, collapsing, reaching a point of maximum compression, and then exhaling, expanding, and reborn. Each breath lasts billions of years. Each exhale is a new Big Bang. Each inhale is a gentle, gravitational sigh as the universe prepares for its next life. The beauty of this model is that it completely does away with the thorny issue of an absolute beginning. There is no need for a creator or a quantum fluctuation from nothing. The universe is its own cause and its own effect, an endless, self-sustaining cycle. Time stretches back infinitely into the past, with an endless series of expansions and contractions, each giving birth to the next. It's the ultimate recycling program. Of course, this is still highly speculative. We don't yet have a full theory of quantum gravity to prove this bounce is possible. But it represents a magnificent hope. A hope that the universe is not only rational, but also resilient. That it cannot be destroyed, only transformed. That death is always followed by rebirth. It's a theory that appeals not just to our intellect, but to something deeper in our spirit. The ancient, enduring belief that life, in all its forms, finds a way to carry on. And in this case, the life in question is the life of the cosmos itself, forever bouncing back from the brink, forever beginning again. Now, after that whirlwind tour of bouncing universes and quantum foam, we have to step back for a moment and acknowledge a different kind of territory. We've been walking the path of science, following the clues of mathematics and observation as far as they can possibly take us. But there are other paths up this same mountain. Paths that are older, built not with equations, but with intuition, wonder, and a deep-seated human need for story and meaning. These are the paths of philosophy and theology, and they offer answers to the question of our origins that are, in their own way, just as mind-expanding as the most complex physics. They are answers that science can neither confirm nor deny, because they operate in a realm beyond measurement. They are matters of belief, and they speak to a part of us that simply wants to know why, not just how. Let's start with an idea that has become surprisingly popular in the last few decades, one that feels ripped from the pages of a science fiction novel, but is taken quite seriously by some philosophers and even a few scientists: the simulation hypothesis. What if our universe, with all its glorious complexity, its heartbreaking beauty, and its seemingly fundamental laws, isn't the base level of reality at all? What if it's an elaborate construction, a simulation running on a computer of unimaginable power, built by a civilization so advanced that their technology is indistinguishable from what we would call magic? Think about our own technological progress. Just a century ago, the idea of a handheld device that could access the entirety of human knowledge would have been pure fantasy. Now we call it a phone. We already create incredibly detailed virtual worlds for entertainment and training. Our video games have their own physics, their own landscapes, their own ecosystems, and their own characters who follow complex algorithms that make them seem almost real. Now, project that trend forward 1,000 years, or 1,000,000. What kind of simulations could a truly advanced civilization create? They might be so perfect, so utterly immersive, that the beings within them, us perhaps, would have no idea they were in a simulation. Their reality, our reality, would be made of information, of bits and bytes, instead of atoms and forces. The laws of physics would be the underlying code of the program. A miracle would just be a bug or a feature introduced by the programmer. In this view, the Big Bang wasn't a physical event, but the moment the simulation was booted up. The initial conditions, the constants of nature that seem so perfectly fine-tuned for life, aren't a mysterious coincidence. They are simply the chosen parameters of the simulation, set by the Creator. The question, what existed before the Big Bang, transforms into who built the computer and what is their reality like. It's turtles all the way down in the most digital sense possible. This idea is ultimately untestable. Any evidence we find that we're in a simulation could itself be part of the simulation. But it serves as a powerful metaphor. It reminds us that our perception of reality is limited by our senses and our instruments, and that there could always be a deeper layer of existence beyond our current comprehension. Then there is the oldest and most enduring answer to the question of origins, the idea of a divine creator. This is the concept of a first cause, a being or a consciousness that exists outside of space and time, unbound by the physical laws it presumably created. In this view, the universe was brought into existence by an act of will, a word, a thought, or a gesture from an entity whose nature is fundamentally beyond human understanding. The Big Bang, then, is not the beginning of God, but the beginning of God's creation. It is the moment the painter touched brush to canvas, the moment the composer wrote the first note of the cosmic symphony. For billions of people across the world and throughout history, this is not a theory, but a matter of faith. It provides a narrative that answers not only how, but why. It places humanity and the cosmos within a framework of purpose and meaning. The fine-tuning of the universe's constants is not a random roll of the dice or a selection effect in a multiverse. It is evidence of deliberate design. The beauty of a sunset, the complexity of a DNA molecule, the vastness of a galaxy, these are not accidents, but expressions of a creative mind. The question, what existed before the Big Bang, is answered simply, God existed. And for faith, that is the beginning and the end of the inquiry. Science and religion often feel like they are in conflict, but they don't have to be. They are simply two different tools for two different jobs. Science is the tool for investigating the mechanisms of the universe. It asks how things work, and it demands testable, reproducible evidence. It is comfortable with saying, we don't know, and then setting out to find out. Religion and philosophy, on the other hand, are tools for investigating meaning and purpose. They ask why we are here and how we should live. They operate on the basis of revelation, scripture, intuition, and personal experience. One can marvel at the mathematical elegance of inflation theory and also feel a profound sense of spiritual awe at the grandeur of creation. They are different languages describing the same magnificent mystery. The key is to understand the boundaries of each realm. When science makes a claim about the natural world that is supported by evidence, it must be accepted. But science can never disprove the existence of God, because God, by definition, in most theologies, exists outside the natural world and is therefore beyond scientific scrutiny. Conversely, religion cannot legitimately make claims about the age of the earth or the mechanics of evolution that are directly contradicted by overwhelming scientific evidence. To do so is to misuse the tool. So, where does this leave us? With a rich tapestry of possibilities, we have the scientific visions of quantum origins, inflationary multiverses, and cyclic bounces, and we have the philosophical visions of simulated realities and divine creators. None of these can be proven with absolute certainty. They are all, in a sense, stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the overwhelming mystery of our existence. The scientific stories are constrained by evidence and mathematics, making them more likely to be literally true in a physical sense. The philosophical and theological stories are constrained by logic and spiritual experience, making them more likely to be metaphorically true in a meaningful sense. Perhaps the most humbling and beautiful conclusion is that the true answer is beyond our current capacity to know. We are like ants on a great tree, trying to understand the forest. We can describe the bark. We can follow the scent trails. We can feel the sun on our leaves. But the full grandeur of the ecosystem is beyond our perception. And that's okay. The search itself is what defines us. Our hunger for answers, our drive to look up at the stars and ask, where did this all come from, is one of the most noble things about being human. It connects the cave painter gazing at the moon to the physicist gazing at equations on a blackboard. We are all wondering the same thing. And in that shared wonder, in that collective pursuit of truth, whether through telescope, scripture, or philosophy, we find a common ground. We find that the quest to understand our origins is, ultimately, a quest to understand ourselves. And so here we are. We've journeyed to the very edge of everything, peered into the abyss of nothingness, and considered possibilities so vast they stretch the very fabric of our minds. We've danced with multiverses, wrestled with quantum foam, and contemplated divine creators. And after all of that, the most honest, the most human thing we can possibly say is this: we don't know. And that's not a confession of failure. It is perhaps the most profound and beautiful admission we can make. It is a statement of humility in the face of a mystery so deep that our finest intellects, our most brilliant minds, can only sketch out possibilities. We are like children on a beach, trying to count the grains of sand with our clumsy fingers. The scale of the unknown is simply that immense. This isn't for a lack of trying. The theories we've explored, inflation, quantum fluctuation, cyclic models, are not wild guesses. They are towering achievements of human reason. They are intricate, mathematically elegant castles built on the foundations of our most successful scientific theories. They feel right. They solve puzzles. They have a compelling internal logic. But they remain, for now, just that: brilliant castles in the air. The problem is one of evidence. How do you test something that happened before time itself? How do you probe a realm where the energies involved are 1,000,000,000,000 times more powerful than anything our most powerful particle collider, the Large Hadron Collider, can ever hope to recreate? It's like trying to figure out the recipe for a cake by only being allowed to look at a single cooled crumb from the very edge of it. The clues are there, but the full picture is infuriatingly out of reach. The scales are almost comically against us. The crucial moments we want to study occurred over intervals of time so short they make a nanosecond look like an eternity. We're talking about events that unfolded in 10 to the power of minus 36 seconds. There isn't even a word for that fraction of a second. The distances involved are similarly ridiculous, smaller than a subatomic particle. Our tools, as magnificent as they are simply not built for that. Our telescopes, like the incredible James Webb Space Telescope, are time machines, it's true. They allow us to look back over 13 billion years and see the earliest galaxies forming. But there's a wall of light. Before a certain point, about 380,000 years after the Big Bang, the universe was so dense and hot that it was opaque. Light couldn't travel freely. It was a raging, foggy soup. We cannot see through that fog. We can only detect the echo of its existence, the cosmic microwave background radiation, which is like the leftover heat from the event itself. The faded baby picture of the cosmos. So, we are left inferring, deducing, and theorizing. We are cosmic detectives at the scene of the ultimate cold case, trying to reconstruct the first moments of a crime with almost no physical evidence. And yet, we keep trying. This is the glorious, stubborn nature of the human spirit. The search itself is the point. Every time a physicist scribbles a new equation on a chalkboard, trying to unite gravity with quantum mechanics, they are throwing a grappling hook over that wall. Every time a new telescope is launched, it's an attempt to polish the lens through which we view that faded baby picture, hoping to see just one more faint detail. We are building ever more sensitive detectors to try and find the faint ripples in space-time from the inflationary period, gravitational waves that would be the first tremors from the birth of the universe. The pursuit is everything. And in this pursuit, we have already uncovered wonders we never could have dreamed of. The quest to understand the Big Bang didn't just give us a creation story. It gave us the tools to understand the universe here and now. It gave us Einstein's theory of general relativity, which is essential for the GPS in your phone to work. It gave us quantum mechanics, which gave us the transistor, the laser, and the entire digital revolution. The struggle to comprehend the immense forged the tools that define our modern world. The cosmic and the practical are intimately linked. But more importantly, this journey has given us a new story of ourselves, a new origin myth grounded in evidence. We have learned that the atoms that make up our bodies, the calcium in our bones, the iron in our blood, the oxygen we breathe, were not created in the Big Bang. The Big Bang mostly made hydrogen and helium, the simple light elements. The rest, the stuff of life itself, was forged in the nuclear furnaces of stars. Stars lived their long lives, fusing these light elements into heavier ones, and then, in their spectacular deaths as supernovae, they blasted this newly created material across the cosmos. This stardust eventually coalesced into new stars, new planets, and ultimately into us. So, when we look up at the night sky, we are not just looking out into a distant foreign place. We are looking back at our own extended family. We are looking at the homes where our atoms were made. We are literally made of the universe. We are stardust that has coalesced. And through a long and improbable chain of events, that stardust has become conscious. It has begun to think. It has begun to feel. It has begun to wonder. And the very first thing this conscious stardust does is to look back at the cosmos from which it came and ask, Where did I come from? This is perhaps the most beautiful and poetic truth science has ever given us. We are the universe's way of knowing itself. This is why we feel that awe, that deep sense of wonder when we stand under a starry sky. It's a feeling of homecoming. It's a feeling of connection to something vast and ancient. The universe is not cold and empty and indifferent. It is our birthplace. It is strange, yes. It is mysterious, absolutely. But it is also wonderful beyond measure. The fact that we can sit here with our limited brains that evolved to spot lions on the savannah and use concepts like mathematics and logic to probe the secrets of quasars, dark energy, and the origin of space-time itself. That is a triumph. It is the greatest story ever told, and we are both its audience and its characters. We may not yet have the final answer to what came before, but the search for that answer has already told us everything we need to know about who we are, curious, awestruck children of the cosmos, forever gazing backward in time to discover our own beginnings. So, the next time you find yourself under that starry sky, feeling small and insignificant, think again. You are the product of 13.8 billion years of cosmic evolution. You are connected to the very beginning of everything. The question of what existed before the Big Bang is not just a scientific puzzle. It is a deeply human one. It is the sound of our curiosity echoing across the cosmos. And while we may not have the final answer yet, the act of asking the question, of reaching for that understanding, is a beautiful and fundamental part of who we are. We are the universe, and we are awake. And our story, the story of everything, is still being written. Wishing you a deep and calm sleep. Good night.